everybody. I'm Aaron Simmons. This is Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, April 13th, 2023. Again, if you have not had a chance to get over to my website, jaaaronsimmons.com, please get signed up for my newsletter. I send it out once a month, and it includes exclusive and early release content. I would love for you to think with me there. And additionally, if you have not yet subscribed here to Philosophy for Where We Find Ourselves, go ahead and do that right now. I would love to continue to think with you about these ideas that really make a difference in practical ways. So today I want to talk about a philosopher that is notoriously difficult. His name is Emmanuel Levinas. He was a Lithuanian-born Jewish thinker who wrote primarily in French. Levinas's big idea is that ethics is first philosophy. Now, that is a heavy and complicated notion, so I'm going to try my best to make it extremely practical. And then over the next few weeks, we can think a little bit more about some of the big ideas with Levinas and some of his more technical notions that attend his philosophy. So let's start with this. Imagine driving down the road and you see someone in need. Maybe they've got a sign saying, please help. Maybe their car has broken down and they're on the side of the road getting ready to change a tire. Maybe they're just waving their arms, trying to flag down somebody without our understanding what really is going on. In that encounter, is it the case that we choose to acknowledge them as a person of dignity, as a human being, or is it the case that they are immediately recognized as such, and then we choose whether or not to adapt our life and respond to it? Levinas says the second option is ultimately the best way of understanding things. In other words, we don't start, as the classical philosophical tradition in the West has operated, we don't start by saying we are free, we exist, we are independent beings who then decide whether or not to take up responsibility and obligation to other people. Instead, we are defined by that very responsibility, and only as such can our freedom then play out as a series of decisions regarding how to navigate the call of the other person to us. Ethics is first philosophy. In this way, Levinas is trying to dethrone the supremacy of ontology and the way that ontology has traditionally been understood as the first philosophical issue. In other words, we don't start by saying, what is the case about existence, about being, and only secondarily ask the question, what ought we to do? Instead, we are defined by that responsibility and obligation and moral encounter with what he terms the other, the face of the other. Now, by face of the other, he doesn't mean the actual physical characteristics that we would identify in a police lineup or when trying to recognize a friend from across a room. Instead, face for Levinas is a term given to the depth dimension by which we cannot ignore the other. So I can roll up my window and try to not pay attention to the person holding the sign. I can say, oh, it sucks that I don't have a spare tire or the ability to help that person. I can decide that, I don't have the time to stop by the person waving their arms. All of these, though, are decisions that start with an acknowledgement, a recognition that the other already lays claim to me. It's the same idea when simply passing somebody in the hall. Bumping into someone can yield a variety of different responses. Excuse me, I'm sorry, oh, pardon me. It also might lead to, what's your problem? Get out of the way, right? There's different ways we can engage, but it's only because we already acknowledge the very moral status of the other person that we aren't able to bump into them in the same way that we would bump into a tree or a fence post or trip on a rock. The idea is that we start with an acknowledgement of the other person and their moral dignity, and that's what gives rise to my selfhood, gives rise to the freedom by which I then figure out how to live in light of that responsibility. So ethics as first philosophy is simply a way of marking that responsibility precedes or goes deeper than or is the condition of freedom. My selfhood is not fundamentally about me being me and then deciding how to relate to others, about being radically independent or radically individual and only then entering society. But instead, it's a matter of what Levinas calls sociality as all the way down. I am social before I am an individual. I am called by the other, and my selfhood, my identity, is a response to that call. The difference here, we might say, is between somebody saying, I am free, and now how will I engage other people, versus someone saying, here I am, as a response to the question, where are you? Selfhood for Levinas, in light of ethics as first philosophy, is fundamentally and structurally a matter of taking ourselves up as distinguished by our responsibility, not by our freedom. Our freedom then is the secondary move. My moral dignity is tantamount to constituting my very selfhood. The face is never an object. The face is instead the depth dimension that is the very condition of being able to hold the door open and say, after you, to someone else. This is, I think, a radical idea in all the right ways. It encourages us and invites us to interrogate the egoism that may threaten even the best of our moral intentions. It's a way of rethinking how we understand who we are and how it is that we live with others. This is important business in a time that is marked by division, marked by distrust. Levinas doesn't tell us what to do, but he might give us some really important critical resources for thinking about why it matters that we really interrogate what we're doing and how we might go about doing it otherwise. All right, well, I'll see you next time, unless a piano falls on our heads.